Welcome, everyone, to Three Side Sports Talk. It's free agent frenzy, so we're going to dive right into it. The Niners making moves, instant reaction now that you've had a little bit of time to digest. Jerry.
Hey, all I got to say is that the power of Parag is real. We all knew it was going to be a monumental task just to retain our own free agents. But not only were the Niners able to keep most of their own major players, but they also added a few key pieces from other teams as well. I mean, obviously our guys wanted to stay, but at the end of the day, we know it was about the money. So, I mean, kudos to Parag Mariota, Adam Peters, John Lynch, and the rest of the front office for their creative accounting skills, and definitely big props to Jed York for his willingness to spend, because there's no doubt that with all their moves so far, they're not only thinking about the future, but they're definitely gunning for a Super Bowl.
Jeff?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was hoping Trent Williams would be signed, but I was trying to play the devil's advocate guy like via text and said, we're not going to get him. We're going to draft a guy. I was hopeful we'd get him, but I wasn't necessarily thinking he would get the most money or the most money for a lineman ever. I really wasn't thinking that. So great. They found the money. They brought him back. I mean, so now we solidified that spot. And then also the guy I was talking about before, Alex Mack, we brought him in, solidify that center position, which is great. We got our left guard. Maybe we figure something out at right guard, get my boy Miners in the third, maybe something like that. McGlinchey, figure it out. It's time, right? Gain some weight, do what you need to do. So, yeah, I'm happy that they brought back Juszczyk, all these guys. One guy, K1, still waiting to see what they do at nickel. So that'd be interesting to find out what they do there. Do we need a receiver somewhere? I'm not sure. But, yeah, I think all in all, a successful free agency so far.
I think it's been very successful, like beyond successful. It's been, paramount to, the best it could have possibly been. But let's just go kind of in order, because right off the bat, we hear Juszczyk is coming back. And I'll say, even though in the little exercise that I went through with The Athletic, I had Juszczyk coming back, part of me really thought he was going to head back east for family reasons, to reunite with the Jets, type of thing. So you get Juszczyk, and for a like you said, a contract that has been crafted in a way that shows good money, good guarantee, but spreads it out where it's not a drastic hit this year. It increases over the next couple of years when hopefully the salary cap starts going up. So that was big. Then you hear Verrett, which was another guy that I really thought was going to be key to come back. And then as it played out, my worry meter started to go up that Trent had not signed. Each day at the end of the day, when Trent hadn't signed, I started thinking, some of these teams are going back to their drawing boards, looking about who's available and going, well, we've missed out on so-and-so. We missed out on so-and-so. Let's pivot and let's look to Trent Williams, thinking somebody was going to go offer him a 6-year, $136 million contract, and there was no way the Niners were going to be able to do it. And then wake up, or if you're up late into the night, that night that he signed, you wake up and he signed, and boy, that just put everything kind of lined up. Because if he had left, boy, they were going to have to pivot quickly into a completely different realm. So Juszczyk, Verrett, Williams, just boom, 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 top 3 priorities. Signed, sealed, delivered, still with money to spend on a few, second tier free agents.
Yeah, real quick, I was gonna mention that. Woke up to my phone buzzing next to me, 2 a.m. Who was it? Jerry. Trent Williams signed. Thanks. Good news.
Heck yeah. Late Tuesday, or actually technically early Wednesday, as you said. Just perusing Instagram before bed when all of a sudden I came across Trent Williams' post, and I'm like, wait, this seems to indicate he's back. And once I saw one of the initial stories come out, I belted out and, oh yeah. And I'm sure I probably woke up my wife and kids and The neighbors, who cares? I was
Worth
just
it.
so excited and relieved because, you all know I was nervous that the Colts or the Chiefs are going to swoop in and blow them away with like a deal that the Niners just couldn't match. But thankfully, our left tackle is all set, as well as you mentioned, our starting center, because apparently Williams seemed to also break the news that Alex Mack was joining the team in his Instagram post as well.
Yeah, so that solidified some things. Then you get Emmanuel Mosley coming back. All of a sudden, you go from secondary being nobody's available to, okay, we got a couple guys to build upon. It doesn't scream we need to go draft multiple guys, but if best player available, or if a Patrick Surtain is there at 12 type of thing, and you can snatch him up, that's what you've built right now, because you have your veterans to start if needed, or if they happen to go a different direction, great. And they did lose a couple guys, Kendrick Bourne being the primary one, and he jumped over to the Patriots. I was a little bit surprised, only because when you broke down his contract, it's basically a $5 million contract. And I thought that's probably what the Niners would be willing to pay for their third receiver. So they clearly either have ideas about waiting on a veteran, drafting someone else, or they still have about $12 million in free agency, and they got some guys who they may not have planned on being able to retain, like a Kerry Hyder. So the amount of people still available is still good for them.
Well, I'm first and foremost still looking at the defensive backfield. I mean, I would love to run it back with K'Wan Williams, right? He's still out there.
Yep. I mean, that was one that again, of all the things that have surprised me, it's the kind of lack of interest or the drawn out process that free agency has taken this year. I mean, I thought for sure K'Wan, day one to the Jets, Saleh start building his defense back up. And we're 3 days into it and he's still available. And the Jets just signed LaMarcus Joyner. So what's happening there? I mean, in my mind,
the Jets in general have been really surprising because we haven't really seen all of Saleh's guys get pillaged by the Jets.
Yeah. And so, but like, I kind of mentioned it, but so we can just jump right into it. Biggest surprise for you guys in terms of free agency, not necessarily about the Niners, but overall?
Biggest surprises? Gosh, there were so many. Well, let me start off with the surprise that really wasn't, like the WTF. No, I'm not talking about the WFT, because that would be the Washington football team. I'm talking about the WTF as in the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, holy smokes, what the F, Gruden, to dismantle one of the strongest parts of your team by getting rid of just about all of your starting offensive linemen in order to have the money to sign free agents on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, they seem just to be trying to plug one hole while creating a bunch of others, and then signing Kenyon Drake to be their backup running back for like $11 million over 2 years when they're strapped for the cap and they've already got Josh Jacobs and no O-line. I mean, right. It's just baffling. And then if anybody was wondering whether Bill Belichick was bothered about missing the playoffs and all the chatter that Tom Brady was the straw that stirred the Patriots dynasty, I think we got our answer by their unprecedented spending spree. I mean, it was like, Matt Judon, you get a contract. Nelson Aguilar, you get a contract. Jonnu Smith, you get a contract. Wait, did I already sign a tight end? Who cares? Hunter Henry, you get a contract. So it wasn't
You forgot Kendrick Bourne. You get a contract.
You mentioned Kendrick Bourne already, so I didn't want to repeat. But yes, Kendrick Bourne, you get a contract. So while it wasn't surprising for New England to reload, it was surprising that they completely opened up the vault. But which was kind of the opposite of teams like, which we mentioned, the Jets and the Jaguars and even the Colts, which, I mean, to me is probably the biggest surprise because I thought those were the teams that were going to take advantage of having the most cap space, but they really haven't.
Jeff?
Yeah, I was gonna say you kind of stole my thunder there. You said the same teams I was gonna say, like New England and the Raiders, right? Like you went right into the Raiders. We were just talking about that. So you took your decent offensive line and said, no, we don't need any of these guys. Like, what are you guys doing? It doesn't make any sense. And like you said, then you go sign a running back to play behind who? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And then they signed Solomon Thomas, I guess. Like, okay, that's really gonna help, right? So yeah, and then the Patriots, man, just going berserk. They were like what 1 or 2 on available cap money to spend, and they definitely are spending it. I mean, I don't know where they stand now. Todd said, right, you have to be under the cap yesterday or whatever it was by 1 o'clock, and I'm guessing they are, but I'm not sure how because they just went and got everybody.
Yeah, so, I agree. Those were also on my list of surprises, and the Raiders were surprising because they didn't have. It's not like their offensive line was free agents and they elected to let them go, or like they didn't. They actively went out and, well, at first they announced they were going to cut Gabe Jackson and Rodney Hudson, and then the other teams are like, whoa, hold on, before you do that, I'll give you something. Like, we want him. So they end up trading these 2 guys. So they traded those 2. They cut Cognito. They trade Trent Brown. 4/5 of your line are gone. I mean, they did re-sign Incognito to a much lower contract and then signed former Texans center Martin. So they are starting to build, but you dismantled a piece that didn't need to be dismantled, seemingly from a play standpoint. Now, behind the scenes, was there grumbling from Gabe Jackson or Rodney Hudson or whatever? I mean, Trent Brown was all set to, he couldn't get out of there quick enough. Rodney Hudson was ready to, agree to cancel out his $3 million guaranteed salary for a release. So clearly there's other things happening in the organization. But at some point, Gruden's got to go, guys, we got to focus on getting people before we let everybody go. So that was surprising. You guys mentioned the Patriots. I also was intrigued that the lack of action by a team like the Colts, who seemingly was on kind of the brink of the playoffs. They went out and got Carson Wentz. Like, you would think that they wanted to, build. Now, maybe they were in on some of these free agents and he just came up a little bit short. And I think the other thing that really surprised me was the lack of a market for wide receivers. Now, maybe these guys are just asking for too much. They're not willing to play the, 1-year contract. They want the long-term guaranteed deal, and it's not there. But you got Kenny Golladay, you got, Juju Smith-Schuster. You got some players who are name guys, young playmakers. There doesn't seem to be a big negative, and 3 days into free agency, and they're sitting at home. So that's what surprised me.
Well, I think wide receiver and running back, I think they're the ones who got the short end of the stick, definitely. I think this year's wide receiver class in terms of the draft is pretty strong, so that could have had an effect on it as well. But real quickly, before we get off the whole not anti-Raider, but clowning on the Raiders, one of the things that I saw today was that the Raiders might also be cutting Marcus Mariota. And what I thought was, also, there was the news that Joe Flacco was visiting the Niners. And I was just thinking, instead of adding a Joe Flacco, who we've heard is, like I said, being considered as a cheap veteran backup for the Niners, why not wait for Mariota to get released and sign him to compete with Jimmy for the starting job, assuming that keeping Jimmy is the direction that the Niners want to go?
I'd be for that because I was on the getting Mariota bandwagon, a month or so ago when he first brought it up. And I think that Raiders tried to gauge his trade level. They weren't getting anything. They asked him to take a pay cut. He said, go pound sand. And so now they got to cut him. And I mean, it's a gamble by Mariota. Now, hopefully his agent's done his due diligence and checked around the league and said, hey, if my guy is released, are you interested in at what price? Because maybe playing for, $5-6 million at a place that he thinks he's got a better chance to start or play is better than, coming back to the Raiders for their $3, $4, $5 million contract. But Jeff, I really want to hear, Joe Flacco in Scarlet and Gold. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I was just blown away when you said that. I'm like, Joe Flacco, what? Didn't he retire, or is he still in the concussion protocol? All I can see is him from 2 years ago had his head taken off, and I'm like, that guy's still playing? I don't know. I mean, the more I thought about it, I was like, no way. This doesn't make any sense. What's the upside there? But then when we were talking a little bit, it's like, okay, maybe for $1 million, but then maybe I'm still drafting a guy. But yeah, but there's a Mariota available. I mean, I'm going to go that route, I think. I mean, I don't know. So the more you talk about, if you bring in a Flacco and he potentially fits Shanahan's system, the more I think he's not going to get a Deshaun or a Mariota, because he's not that statuesque pocket guy. That was what I was just thinking right now when you said that.
So
as far as getting Mariota.
Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of rolls into the next thing that I wanted to talk about, and that's the quarterback carousel. You saw Fitzpatrick, go to Washington. You saw Brissett go down to Miami. You saw Trubisky take a job in Buffalo, which I thought was interesting, because I heard two different scenarios, and I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. That a guy like Trubisky could either A, go to a place that already has an established quarterback with supposedly some good coaching, like Buffalo, learn under Josh Allen, get the coaching, and then try and make something of himself, next year. Or he could go to a place that probably needed a starter, or at least where he could compete to start. But then you never know. You're getting into a new system, and are you going to get pounded, and thus your future is kind of done. So, but in addition to that, the Niners are kind of in that, at least from my point, you don't need to be in a rush right now to go sign a backup quarterback, because the guys that are available, and I'm not putting Mariota in there because he's not technically available yet. But you're talking about your Alex Smith, Chase Daniel, Colt McCoy, AJ McCarron, Matt Barkley. I mean, do any of these guys scream upgrade from Nick Mullins? So if this is all that's available, put it on the back burner and let's see what comes out of, if anyone gets released and into the draft and all that kind of stuff. So your thoughts?
Well, I was just going to say, this is the problem with Jimmy Garoppolo, is that there's seemingly a lack of confidence, whether it's that he can stay healthy or that he can up his game without a veteran presence. And I think I was just texting with Jeff about that very point, in that's why you're seeing their interest in a Joe Flacco, because clearly he's a veteran. He played in Denver when Rich Scangarello was there, so he has familiarity with the system. We saw just a few moments ago that there was an article posted that Flacco has Kyle Juszczyk's vote of confidence, so you know that he's good in the locker room. He's a good teammate. So as Todd mentioned, it's kind of slim pickings now. There's not a whole lot out there. So if you're going to get a veteran coming in at the minimum, it could be a 36-year-old Joe Flacco, right?
Yeah. I guess you always talk about those relationships and then not realizing, oh, he was with Scangarello, so there you go. And then other players saying, yeah, I want this guy in the locker room. So, but yeah, like I told Todd, I think it was like, if you can get him for the minimum, whatever that is, very minimal deal. And then, worst case, you release him, come September or August or whatever. That's fine.
But I am very surprised by Mitch Trubisky going to Buffalo, because I don't believe there's any sort of connection there. I don't think Brian Daboll and Trubisky have any sort of relationship or connection in the past. And this is, like you said, Todd, this really seems like a situation where he's going to I don't want to say take a year off, right? Because obviously anything can happen. Josh Allen might get hurt, whatever. But it does seem like it's a reset for him. Like, let me go to a place where the pressure's off and I can learn, while sort of sitting behind a guy.
And I guess another reason why that's a little bit surprising is because when the Bears signed Dalton, I thought he's not an upgrade from Trubisky. I must rather run it back with Trubisky. Why are you signing Dalton? So, yeah. I mean, but maybe just because you want just a clean slate, and like, let's get rid of this guy. I don't know what else.
I mean, besides the Raiders and maybe the Texans being the losers in free agency, because, well, the Texans are just a freaking mess. but that's low hanging fruit. But the Bears, I think are like that next team that if you said, oh, well, who lost out in free agency, I would think the Bears, because after all the buzz about how aggressively they tried trading for Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson at the end of free agency, they're left with Andy Dalton and Nick Foles at quarterback.
Well, let me. It's interesting you say that, because let me put it to you this way: they're coming up? They're seemingly coming up short. Now, I think they did overpay for Dalton, but they very well may have looked at what we just looked at of the list of quarterbacks and go, dude, there's nobody here. Like, we've got to get a guy. So go get Dalton. He's the absolute best. But my take on the Bears is Russell Wilson's agent is the one who screwed the Bears, because basically he put the Bears on his list of 4 teams, and that got the Bears fans over the moon. Like, it's possible. So even though there seemed to be nothing there, even though the Bears offered reportedly 3 firsts, a second, Khalil Mack, and Akeem Hicks, like, and the Seahawks said no. So the fans now have to go from thinking Russell Wilson to Andy Dalton, when it's more like
which was never going to happen, right? It was never going to happen.
The agent got the fans so excited and let him down, not so much the team. So I just thought that was huge.
Well, I think it's everything, right? It's that, but then they paid Andy Dalton $10 million, and supposedly because of his connection with Bill Lazor, he's going to be the starter.
Yeah.
And then they're now having to cut Kyle Fuller for cap purposes. And then they saw their former Pro Bowl guard, Kyle Long, unretire and sign with the Chiefs.
Yep. Yeah. So a lot of things moving around, which is, exciting to watch as it just kind of churns along the tickers on the bottom of all the sports channels. One thing I do want to point out, Jameis Winston returning to the Saints, but that was following the retirement officially of Drew Brees, which Jerry called on the last podcast, saying he was going to retire on the anniversary that he signed with New Orleans. And that's exactly what happened. On the anniversary of when he first signed with New Orleans, he announces his retirement, which, seems completely apropos as to what, closing the loop. So virtual high five to Jerry for knowing that and calling that. So Brees gets moved to the media box. He's going to work for NBC, and the Saints, I guess, go in with a Winston, Taysom Hill quarterback battle, so that will be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, but speaking of the Saints, couldn't they have been a player for Mitch Trubisky, rehab his career like they did with Drew Brees? I mean, that'd be a better option, I think, than Jameis Winston, but
but Winston's been there a year. I'm sure there was some rumblings about the reason why Sean Payton was even hesitant on playing Winston last year was he didn't want to showcase him just for this reason. Now they can get him back at a cheaper deal and then really get him in. And so who knows what's really going on in New Orleans? I mean, if you were just to ask me how I think it would go, I would just say they're probably going to do almost kind of like, I don't want to say a college type quarterbacking rotation, but it'll probably be primarily Jameis Winston. And then they'll fold in some, gadget plays, some special plays for Taysom Hill.
But either way, I would think losing a Hall of Famer, you're going to take a step back now in that division, right? I would think, but you never know.
Yeah, I mean, you would think you're going to take a step back, but as we've seen in the NFC, things change quickly in terms of teams worst to first, and one injury here just decimates people. So in the NFC, there just is not a core. I mean, as much as you want to say, there's a core group of teams, I don't think you could, I wouldn't bank or bet big money that I can name the playoff teams for next year. I can probably pick a couple, but that's going to be, the Saints are usually a lock for a playoff team. I don't know if they're going to be a lock, especially in that division. So those types of things are going to make rolling into the season that much more interesting.
Well, if Winston can cut down on his interceptions, I mean, he did throw for a ton of touchdowns when he was with the Buccaneers the last time we saw him as a starter. So he didn't cut down on those interceptions. He did have the LASIK. So, maybe that was the issue, right? But
if Jimmy could stay healthy, if Taysom Hill could, grow, if Trubisky didn't suck, there's a lot of ifs, but
we do know that division right now is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to lose with Brady and all those guys that they're running it back with.
Yeah, the Bucs are definitely running it back. I mean, they tried to get everybody to come back, and so far they have. I mean, you even got Gronk coming back, so we'll see what they can do. We'll see if they have any kind of Super Bowl hangover. I mean, not only from playing an extended season, but now you got. These guys aren't spring chickens. These guys are not spring chickens. One guy we forgot to mention about the Niners in free agency was DJ Jones. And I'm sure it's definitely going to fly underneath the national radar. Yeah. Even locally, it's not going to get a whole lot of buzz. But I think signing DJ Jones as, an interior defensive lineman is big. He played well for them. And that's another, tip of the cap to Parag, to be able to sign all those top tier free agents and still be able to retain some of these players that, you may not have thought he was going to be able to. So to get DJ Jones back, another rotational piece on the defensive line that I think is going to be, enhanced. So
definitely an underrated signing, as you said, and totally glad he's back to anchor the middle of that defensive front. Especially we don't have a lot to show from that wretched 2017 draft class, but at least we do have George Kittle and DJ Jones. Mm-hmm. Another name we haven't mentioned was Samson Ebukam. So as you guys know, I thought Carl Lawson would have been a great fit for the Niners. Unfortunately, his price tag was not a good fit. So taking a flyer on Ebukam at a very moderate deal with the hopes that he can be that pass rush specialist, I guess is a gamble worth taking, especially when you consider how much money some of these other defensive ends got in free agency. I don't know if you guys saw, but Bud Dupree got 4 years, $82 million after he tore his ACL in December. Mm-hmm. So I guess Ebukam's deal could be a steal, especially because we have that ace in the hole in defensive line coach Chris Kusarik, who just might be able to unleash Ebukam's for full potential. Because there was an article I read today which compared Ebukam to Shaq Barrett when Barrett first signed with the Bucs. So I certainly wouldn't mind if Kusarik could help Ebukam turn into our version of Shaq Barrett.
Yeah. I would say when I first saw that, I thought, I don't mind that at all. Here's a little bit cheaper guy. I don't know a lot about him, to be honest, but apparently he's not been hurt. He's dependable. He's athletic. He's fast. Okay. So he hasn't played a lot. Maybe he's a younger version of D Ford. Just needs to be developed and get that speed off the edge is what we need. So I'm good with it, especially, like you said, some of these other guys, like even Reddick, signing for probably like 8, I guess. So, you get a couple of years out of Ebukam, see what he's got.
25 years old, hasn't missed a game. Yeah. He had a low snap count with the Rams, basically because he was a spot pass rusher. But if you put him into kind of a defensive line rotation, you got a healthy Bosa back and DJ Jones and Eric Armstead and Kinlaw. You start seeing that he's not going to be asked to, play, 90% of the snaps. He's going to be able to, move outside, and he's athletic enough should, defensive coordinator DeMeco Ryans need him to float out into the flat to cover a receiver or a running back or drop back. He's done that with the Rams. So I think they're getting at least another chess piece, another athlete to work in that. One thing.
Well, also, but with that contract, you kind of add that one to D Ford's now, because, and then that's what the player you get, because if we get anything out of D Ford, right? Like a play, then we're like, great.
Yes, if you get a play, it's just positive for right now. The fact that D Ford was not going to pass the physical, so the Niners had to restructure the contract and extend his injury guarantee over a couple of years. It was going to cost them more to cut him rather than extend him and just, let him sit on IR. So, if he comes back from his neck back injury and does anything, I mean, shoot, if he mentors these guys and teaches a pass rush, that's just gravy, and he'll be off the books as soon as his contract allows. But one of the topic we didn't talk about when we were talking about quarterbacks was Deshaun Watson. Obviously, a couple things have come out. One, Michael Lombardi came out and said that his sources say Deshaun wants to play for either Denver or San Francisco. So for all the people who have their fingers crossed that the Niners could make a move for Deshaun, if Michael Lombardi's sources are correct, you got a shot. At least you're on the list. On the other hand, Deshaun's in some legal trouble. At least it's whether it's a money grab or they're trying to defame him or do whatever. He's got some sexual assault allegations coming out in Houston, which I don't know. It's the type of thing that you see. It's the dirty politics. You don't know what to believe. You don't know where these are coming from. You don't know what outside of they were in a room together, and then it becomes what happens, who said what to whom, and things like that. So he's going to have to figure that out, that portion of his off field. And until something happens, I don't expect a team to trade for Deshaun quite yet. So a couple things to, comment on.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, look, I'm definitely not taking these accusations against Deshaun lightly. Obviously, sexual harassment and sexual assault are serious matters. However, the way that this has come to light, and the lawyer, and you talking about dirty politics, the guy I think recently ran for mayor in Houston, and people did not have nice things to say about him, but he's the guy who's driving these lawsuits, and his connection with the Texans owner just makes it all seem a bit fishy. I mean, here you've got this totally shady lawyer who claims that he's not doing it for the money, but oh, by the way, he's going after Deshaun's money. Mm-hmm. And there's been no criminal reports that I've heard of, I don't think. And the lawyer just so happens to be the neighbor of Texans owner Cal McNair. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's not legitimate because we haven't seen any evidence of anything yet, but I don't know. One thing that just doesn't seem to make sense is that the lawyer had claimed that Deshaun recommended to other NFL players to get a massage from his plaintiff. But then I'd be wondering, why would he do that if he and this masseuse truly had kind of a, undesirable exchange, right, occur? I mean, it's just to me, the situation doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and everything's pretty quiet. Obviously, everything's everything's been redacted. Nothing's coming out in the press except the headlines from the lawyer. So it's obviously Deshaun's going to have to figure it out. But it does seem strange that star quarterback embroiled with a controversy with his own team about playing and distrust and things like that. That this comes up. But Jeff, you got thoughts on Deshaun, whether it's either he wants to play for the Niners or his off-field issues?
Yeah, off-field real quick. What's the saying? I'm not saying, I'm just saying, or what is that? I'm just saying it's all fishy, just the timing of it. I love the word allegedly, of course. That's always used, right? Allegedly. I'm always curious, just how I am, right? When there's no criminal reports of any wrongdoing, right? Anybody can sue anybody anytime. Now, all of a sudden, you have a couple, 2, 3, now we got 9. So it's all very odd, right? And then what Jerry said, the relationship with the owner, I mean, I didn't know that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But, yeah, it's very odd timing. Regarding the teams, Niners I see. The Broncos I don't really get. So I would just say that the Niners, we've always seen that. We thought that's a great place to go, great destination, right? Out of the division, perfect. A guy we missed on before, maybe we can get him now. The Broncos, I don't really get, especially like Jerry's mentioned before, what's going on with ownership / president / GM? Is Fangio on the hot seat? Like, what's going on there? Is this a team ready to compete in Mahomes' division with Herbert? I mean, I don't know. I don't if I see the link to the Broncos, but the Niners, sure.
Yeah, especially after the free agent, all the free agent action. I'm sure if Deshaun, I wouldn't be surprised if Deshaun told his agent after seeing Trent Williams come back and all these other guys come back, it's like, send me to San Francisco. That's where I want to go.
Well, Jerry always likes to connect the dots. So let me just throw a couple dots out there that Trent Williams lives in Houston and owns a gym. Deshaun Watson goes to Trent Williams' gym. So if Trent has just signed this big contract and he's excited and he's letting Deshaun know, you know what? I'll protect your blind side. I'm good. I got Alex Mack coming, we're good. Kyle's awesome. Like there's your dots right there. So it's from a football standpoint, it's too bad that this is going to hang over Deshaun because as a team, if you're the Niners, you're going to need clarity before you do anything. So you can't just, ship off your first round draft picks in Eric Armstead in case, these things come true and he's getting a suspension or any number of things, right. Which I guess puts the Niners in the position of, well, we're keeping Jimmy for the moment, so it's staying in that ballpark of we're staying with Jimmy for the moment. And if things shake out and Deshaun does become available, we got about 6 weeks until the draft. Then you'll pull the trigger and try and get that done, or at least throw out a proposal and see. So we'll have to monitor the situation. So, go ahead.
Another thing, real quick, I was going to say, speaking of dots, I heard this today on one of the sports talking about don't count out New England with their relationship with Caserio. And I keep thinking what Jerry said a while back, which I'd love to see happen maybe, is that three-way. They didn't mention that in the sports talk, but you've mentioned that, right? Us to New England with Jimmy, and then Deshaun back to us. I mean, they add a couple firsts or whatever the case is. They obviously Houston would need a quarterback of some sort. I don't know if you could then package Cam. I don't know if that's even a thing, but yeah, I mean, maybe you get a three-way instead. Not necessarily Deshaun going to New England, but
you got Tyrod Taylor, man. They're good.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So going into free agency, you had your priorities. Now that you're a few days in, where do you stand in terms of what would you like to see next? What are the next couple things?
Oh, well, I mean, in terms of the Niners?
Yeah.
Well, I think I mentioned the defensive backfield, right? Like, I'd love to see them bring back K'Wan Williams, but if he doesn't return, obviously they're going to need a slot corner. And there are a lot of, and I'd love to see more depth at that position because we ain't having another Brian Allen fiasco happening, that's for sure.
Right.
And there seems to be quite a deep pool of available players still on the market from a cornerback standpoint. So yeah, and we just talked about Kyle. I think we talked about Kyle Fuller getting released. I'd love to see him in a Niner uniform. But also, I'm not sure what's up with Jaquiski Tart. I definitely feel more comfortable if we weren't just relying on Tavarius Moore and Marcel Harris at safety. So, whether we can bring back Tart or, another free agent on the market, that'd be nice. Yeah, and then other than that, I feel like sort of a kid in a candy store because the Niners have shown that they're in it to win it. They've brought back a whole slew of guys already. So, after the top of the food chain guys get paid, the Niners can sort of cherry pick the veterans who are still going to be out there and willing to sign a cheap deal this season for a chance to win. Like, maybe Phillip Lindsay, who the Broncos just let go, or T.Y. Hilton. Or even, this is sort of, I guess, out of left field, but maybe Mitchell Schwartz, who is still sort of rehabbing his injury, but maybe he'll come back in a backup fashion. And who knows, like if things aren't really, if McGlinchey isn't, figuring things out, a guy like Mitchell Schwartz would be great to have as a plan B. Or, I know that we just added Ebukam, but what if Jadeveon Clowney doesn't get the deal that he wants, or Carlos Dunlop? I mean, I feel like, The Niners are in a really good position. I feel like they're in the driver's seat right now. So yeah, I think there are a lot of players still out there to choose from.
Jeff, what do you want to happen? What do you want the Niners to do?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think Jerry mentioned every position group there. Well, maybe not everyone. How about linebacker? I know we got two really good ones, but are there any guys out there we can pick up? Is that a special team guy, or do we just rely on the draft? Can we get another guy to play Will? I'm not sure. Maybe that's a spot. I agree with everything else you said, though. That corner, nickel. The problem is still waiting on trying to figure out what's going on with Deshaun or the draft or what we do at quarterback. But as far as the other positions go, yeah, I mean, linebacker, secondary, I would like to see Tart, maybe let him play the market and see if nothing's there, bring him back on a small deal, especially with the cap possibly going up, bring him back on a 1-year deal or a 2-year team-friendly deal with some of these guys. I mean, I think they're in a pretty good spot because it sounds like even though they signed all those guys with some pretty big deals, we still have some decent cap room. So then that's the key. So I mean, maybe you can still bring back a Hyder or a Dunlap or something like that on top of Ebukam.
Yeah. So if I'm looking at it, Hyder moves to the top of the guys that I would like to bring back, just because in 2 years ago when they went to the Super Bowl, it was their defensive line being able to rotate quality guys through there. And I think Hyder is a quality guy who can rush the passer, play the run, spell these guys a little bit. So nobody's playing 80% of the snaps. I would like them to kick the tires on Jaquiski Tartt because he did seem to come into his own a little bit over the last 2 years in terms of playing safety and even moving down, playing a little bit more of a box safety when needed. But I'd also like them to look out, and I would, as much as I would like Kyle Fuller, I gotta think someone's gonna get. I mean, maybe this is where the Jags and Colts go and spend, their big money, because he's coming off of what was gonna be, I think, a $20 million contract with the Bears. So I don't think he's ready to, drop all the way down to 6. But if the Niners could somehow talk him into 7 or 8 and on a 1-year deal and prove it, I'd take it. I'd also like him to, kick the tires on Adoree Jackson. He's a guy who seems to have been miscast a little bit, but he's a guy from Southern California. You bring him back to California, put him in a defense that I don't know if it's to accentuate his positives or whatnot, but he seems to be the type of player in the Richard Sherman mold of he's not worried about anything. He's a ball player. And so to get him would be good. But again, he might be a little bit pricey. So not to go Jerry, but I would totally, I'd love to, sit there and in a couple weeks if Jadeveon Clowney's not on a team, you're coming in, whoever needs a spot of these free agents, and especially with so many guys signing these 1-year deals, they're looking to come in, make a little bit of money and hit the free agent market next year when the salary cap's back up. So,
well, I mean, I've been really worried about the whole cap crunch, and in some respects, it's been a legitimate issue. I mean, we've seen, teams have to cut certain guys who, under normal circumstances, they wouldn't have had to cut. But one of the interesting comments I heard this week was from Michael Silver on the NFL Network, where he basically said that in all other years, the cap is essentially a myth, and that it's only used as an excuse for those less aggressive owners to not spend money because they get their slice of the pie, whether their team wins or loses. And if the owner's willing to spend to win, then there's all sorts of accounting tricks they can use to manipulate the cap to make things work. And I think we're already totally seeing that manifest itself with all these contracts that are being signed now. I mean, I had never heard of the concept of having voidable years, but apparently that's how Taysom Hill's 4-year, $140 million extension is somehow really just a 1-year deal with all subsequent years being voidable. So it's just a long-winded way of saying, yes, whoever you want to sign, go sign them. Yeah. Clearly, you can just get anybody and you can construct and manipulate the contract however you want. So go get your Kyle Fuller. Go get your Jadeveon Clowney.
So some of that, yes, some of that is myth, and some of it is just window dressing. For example, Trent Williams. Trent Williams, you can only spread the salary cap over 5 years. So with the Niners offer of what he got plus with his 5 years, he wasn't the highest paid. But when they throw a $33 million sixth year on there, all of a sudden he becomes the highest paid. So the headline is Trent Williams becomes highest paid, when in actuality, that sixth year isn't guaranteed. There's nothing on it. There's not even a signing bonus on it, but his agent gets to say, I signed the largest contract for an offensive lineman. So yeah, they can. So that it's definitely interesting to dig deep into these contracts to exactly see what's happening. Cause yeah, Taysom Hill, $140 million. No, just kidding. It's a 1 year, $6 million. And it's voidable if he touches the football this year. That's the essential. I saw Andrew Brandt, who's he's a great follow on Twitter. He used to work in the Packers organization type thing as in the cap area. He wrote a contract for Doug Peterson when Doug Peterson was a player, that if Doug threw 20 touchdowns in a game, he would get like $40 million, like something absurd to reach the cap floor or something. So they have to put some of this in, which is absolute fluff, and they know it obviously. And, the players, all they care about either is the headline and their guaranteed money. So, yeah.
I minored in business at Cal, but I don't remember creative accounting being one of the classes.
Well, that's because you went there when you were still using an abacus and a slide.
No, I was just going to add, to Jerry's point, if the cap is just a myth, then we need to remember that and stop worrying about it every year. Because I thought the same thing, what are we going to do? And then they do all this. So then it's if it's just a myth, then what the hell, just pay the guy, whatever.
And I heard Drew Rosenhaus even say something like, you can always add in these incentives that, that into the contract, which apparently don't even count against the cap, which I don't understand, but apparently that's a thing too. So,
well, we can dive into the intricacies of the salary cap at a later date, but let's get to our final thoughts. Jeff.
Oh, Jeff. Oh man. I was I don't know. Let me yield my time back to Jerry first. Go ahead. Jerry,
okay.
Go ahead.
You threw Jeff the curveball. So despite the diminished cap, or maybe it was because of it, free agency this year I thought was every bit as juicy as any other year, which is why I'm enjoying this cold one here called Juicy Bits. It's an IPA from Weldworks Brewing in Colorado. It's got a citrusy and floral hops aroma and taste, just smooth, medium-bodied, solid IPA. Kind of like how the Niners free agency has gone, just so far, just solid. So I'm just going to give my props to Jed, John, Kyle, and everyone at 49 Centennial for creating such a great culture in that building that's made all our guys want to stay. Much like Todd's favorite, Dave Matthews Band, likes to sing, they got a taste of the good life, whether right or wrong, makes them want to stay Niners for a while.
Well, I think we have our closing song. Excellent.
Right.
It won't be Jerry's rendition, but we'll might find a professional to do that.
Yeah. And so in regard to final thoughts, I don't have a beer in front of me. I didn't know we were doing this every time. But as the weather warms up, I need to go get me some more mango cart or find something else good like that. So, I guess to your point, Jerry, in the final thought, I didn't have much else, but I agree. It was really a very what's the word? Positive experience this whole free agency period this time. There was no disappointment. I wasn't man, now what are we going to do? So I think definitely hats off to the crew of 49, and let's do it. Right now, I'm just looking forward to the draft. Who else can we add? I mean, we're definitely in a better place mentally than just, now what? Right.
So you're not Chicago Bear fan.
Correct. Right.
Nice.
Good place to be.
I'll echo your sentiments about how exciting free agency was. I mean, I was, monitoring kind of, Twitter and social media as on Monday morning, seeing what's happening, what deals are happening. So it was exciting for me to watch, and is even more exciting to see the Niners check off the boxes of bringing the guys back, which is, what they want to do. As you've said earlier, they're not only looking towards the future, but they're looking to go for it right now. With that said, my final thought is I would like to blame Kevin Durant for the fans' image of the Niners. What are you talking about, Todd? Let me tell you. When Kevin Durant came to the Warriors almost became not unwatchable, but not watchable, because they were gonna win. There was no question. In fact, fans got so spoiled. It was like they only won by 30. Curry only sat out the fourth. Fans here in the Bay got so spoiled when Kevin Durant was here that not winning wasn't good enough. Blowing teams out there was talk of, could they not lose a playoff game? Could they win 85 games? There's only 82 in the schedule. That's how good they are. They're going to win 85. Yeah. So I'm listening to radio throughout these last couple of days, and people are talking about the Niners, and the question comes, oh, are they a Super Bowl contender? And people are like, no. And I'm like, I'm not saying they're the shoo-in or the favorite, but what they've done makes them a contender. There isn't a team out there that you would match the Niners up with, a healthy Niners team, and go, nah, they just don't have a chance. That's not happening. And it's because the fans are no longer accepting of a competitive team or a contender. If their team isn't the shoo-in to win the championship, they don't want anything to do with it. Oh, it's going to be a disaster. What happened to just enjoying the game, enjoying the season, enjoy the entire process? And if you have a good team, there's nothing better than watching a good team deep into the playoffs. You may not enjoy the Packers or the Saints or the Bucks, but when you got into the playoffs and games were going back and forth, I was invested, and any fan would seem to want to be invested. So one more thing that Kevin Durant just screwed us out of, not only an extended Warriors window of championships, but he has brought nothing but an absolute shoe-in championship is good enough for the Bay Area fans. So that's what has upset me in my final thoughts.
I think you're overacting just a little bit. I enjoyed KD, but I personally think that
I loved him. I loved him. My thing is, and I'm not saying it's his fault directly, but the fans they took everything for granted. They took winning for granted because it was just assumed. And it was because they were so good, which obviously KD made them so good. So
but I will separate into buckets. I will say in the Warrior fandom, I could see your point. I think in the Niner fandom, they just have Jimmy G PTSD, man. That's all it is. With Jimmy and all the games he's missed, it's really difficult to go into the season thinking we have a chance at the Super Bowl with Jimmy at the helm.
Well, he did it 2 years ago, so there's the proof is in the past that it can be done. Again, not that it will be done, but it can be done.
I'm just saying PTSD. Again, PTSD. It's a real thing, my friend.
I just have to say real quick before we sign off. We've talked about it before during the year. A healthy Niner team, I'm putting up against anybody.
Yes, absolutely.
With Joe Flacco as the backup.
No, yeah, right.
Go Niners.
Joe Flacco as the backup. All right. Well, that was a fun free agent frenzy. We will be back hopefully next week with some more news, and we're going to start ramping up towards the NFL draft. As we ramp up, we're going to be talking about pro days. We're going to be breaking down mock drafts. We're going to try and have something special for all the listeners in the days leading up to the draft, and that's our own maybe mock draft or bringing in some guests to discuss players. So we'll see what happens. In the meantime, thank you for downloading. Like, comment, subscribe. Hit us up on Twitter at 3 Side Sports, and we will talk to you next week. Good night.